Hey everyone, this is Roman Prokopchuk, and this is the Digital Savage Experience podcast. Today I have with me Jeffrey Besecker. He's a soulful business and entrepreneur coach. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Roland. Thanks for having me on. It's great to have a chance to sit down and talk with you.
My pleasure. So tell me a little bit about your journey. How did you get to where you are today?
Uh, about 20 years ago, started out in brand development and graphic design. I've kind of worked my way through that course, a lot of different up and down changes. Along that path, discovered that I was not cut out to be an average punch the clock Joe. uh, Worked my way in through the music industry as a artist development manager, brand and identity development specialist, doing everything from album packaging design and eventually kind of moving into doing overall career development, um, everything from doing social media development with new clients and new artists to eventually, as I kind of got drawn into that, teaching artists how to structure their business, structure their touring, and that led eventually to helping book and promote artists, actual tour scheduling, and number of other different areas, reaching on into doing touring merchandise, developing merchandising lines. Artists were struggling with trying to make money. A lot of them typically come in, back in the 2000s, especially when I was jumping into it, before more of the DIY movement has kind of taken gravity. They were, struggling to figure out typical how to make ends meet and how to negotiate that big jump from playing the local circuit, local bars, to becoming a functioning business artist, beyond even just looking at signing with record labels. And that was kind of the typical path of figuring out how to sign with a record label. So jumped into that for a number of years, about 8 years worth of helping artists develop, coming up with a complete comprehensive business plan. It was kind of a complete new shift in thinking for a lot of them to look at it not as I'm playing music, how do I make money from it, to I am a business, how do I structure this with a comprehensive business plan?
No, that's great. I think that's obviously still super important in 2020. And then with everything in terms of advancements in social media and other distribution platforms, I think music is a great example of kind of do it yourself also. And I think it's important, obviously, with everything going on in the world now, to have the ability to kind of dictate your own destiny, especially online.
Sure. And, I think it's kind of been a growth model for business in general, where, people with the introduction of internet exposure and being able to connect and link, it's really shifted the way people function as a business, and to the point where, that kind of, I ran my course with that, teaching artists, and they figured out, hey, I don't need this other guy now to teach me how to run my business, because, they grew and kind of followed along with the times. As a result of that, I, was kind of bumped around into things, had decided I was going to try to pursue my passion as a cook and a chef, completely self-taught, but had worked through my branding endeavors over the years with a number of hospitality businesses, restaurateurs, people in the catering business, and had a lifelong love of cooking. I'm an adventurer, so I decided, well, I'm going to embrace this next new adventure and dive into learning how to become a restaurateur. Little did I know that, now 8 years on from having made that decision and going through the course of that, probably the biggest godsend was having that adventure kind of take its course before all of this upheavals happened. I got in and was fortunate, had a partner of mine, a buddy of mine, reach out. He was looking to transition from a food truck operation he was doing, and had a real nice turnkey opportunity for us to jump in. And along with my now fiance, who I've been with for 10 years, we jumped in and decided to partner up with him, and made our run at building into the restaurant business and becoming restaurateurs. Quite an adventure there. I was all over the map. Much like much of my journey, I always seem to bite off a little bit more than what most people will choose, and then get to the gist of figuring things out. And the process of that, it's kind of forced me to adapt and grow, and look at things from a lot of different unique angles, and pretty much become a problem solver out of necessity.
Yeah, I mean the restaurant business is obviously a brutal business. I think most restaurants fail in kind of the
Oh yeah,
first year, and
yeah.
it's tough in terms of scaling and having a concept. And obviously, sometimes even if the food's good, everything else is good, something may not work in terms of a location or obviously
Mhm.
logistically. So, I mean, it's I think one of the hardest kind of endeavors
Oh yeah,
one
yeah.
undertakes.
Definitely, it's probably one of the highest mortality rated businesses there are out there. And never be it for me to back off from a challenge. I decided to make that go. It's also one of the more challenging in generating income, and keeping a positive growth going under normal circumstances. I think even more so now, we've seen the fall off of that, being that it's one of the first things that's went through all of this coronavirus epidemic, and it's going to be a monumental thing for a lot of businesses just to survive and stay afloat while they're in kind of a holding pattern. I can relate to that through our journey. We lost a building lease. The building owner decided that they were going to transition out of building ownership and dissolving partnerships with another entity, and kind of left us without a location, kind of in that same mode where you've got all of the circumstances to run and be profitable, grow, and you're just kind of in a waiting pattern. Where do we restart? Eventually we decided to let go of that venture, because it did become such a monumental task to try to relocate a building, start from square one. We had 2 or 3 other businesses going at the time, and just said, hey, this is time to count losses and focus on what's already working. Sometimes that's the hardest thing to do, is know when you've got a number of opportunities and which opportunity is the right road to take. And it ended up, here we are 3 years down the road, and heaven forbid, we made the right choice on that, instead of going down and trying to dive back into that endeavor, and we would have been back here to the same square 3 years later, where everything's kind of shut down on. So, thanking my blessings for that.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. So, what motivates you to succeed currently?
Currently, I went through a soul searching period after closing that restaurant down. Kind of going back to that square one mentality, where I had worked through, all of my college education was in marketing and brand design, and building through, oh geez, looking back, at least 2 or 3 other recessionary downturns, working in that industry, where every time it was a retool, it's trying to figure out what's pushing you alone to motivate and grow above it, and creatively problem solve that to keep marching on. Through all of my experiences, I've had my back pushed against the wall to try to figure out, which end is up. Some of my own doing, some of it being normal economic cycles, some of it just being the nature of the beast and the nature of business. And through all those ups and downs, what I've figured out is I've always been good at trying to figure out how to overcome those large challenges, the big picture challenges of just staying alive and, learning to keep afloat. And then also trying to reach out to others in those experiences and saying, hey, you've kind of backed yourself in a corner or been put in a position here where, you got to be brave and kind of soldier on. And, I've had it put on my heart all those times that it was my kind of quest to reach out to others and be that resource for a strength to lean on, and then becoming something that could kind of rest assured that, hey, this guy's kind of been there, done that, and being able to kind of help them work through that process of having the challenge to grow past.
Yeah, it's often tough in terms of entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs to have that kind of tough skin and be able to pivot. So, what's one thing you may have seen as a weakness in yourself in the past that you've turned around and utilized as a strength today?
I think the biggest weakness I've had to overcome is just realizing my own humanness. I always kind of approach things as with that Superman mentality that I'm going to dive in this and figure out. And sometimes that can be your biggest downfall is not realizing that sometimes it's okay to fail. No matter what's thrown at you, sometimes it's okay to not have that big dream come together and then go back and have to reevaluate it in some way. I think that was the biggest challenge for me to grow past, was to realize that just because you bite off that big dream, it's not always going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. I think the variables have to align, and even if you may be the best at something, it doesn't mean you're guaranteed success. So, and like you said, failing gets you to, success. You
Hmm.
can't succeed without failing. I mean, you have those flukes where everything is kind of aligns and you meet the right people or things get handed to you and it happens. But most things are learning experiences. You pivot, you take something out of it if you did fail and utilize it to build up the next thing that you tackle in life.
True, true. Everything is a day-to-day basis. We count our blessings for the days we have. We can't get caught up in that cycle of anxiety where we're too focused on the future. I think life is really important to kind of focus on the moment and appreciate what is good. And if you're thrown that curveball, you just kind of learn to jump on the horse and ride and soldier your way through it.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the most important qualities in an entrepreneur or anyone trying to tackle anything is self-awareness and having emotional IQ. I think those two things paired together really gets you a lot further than, I mean, I think anything hire an individual or deal with someone, if they have the will to learn something, they'll learn it. Knowledge can always be learned, but kind of those soft skills don't necessarily, transcend, and some of them can't necessarily be taught to a certain extent.
True, true. There's so much truth in that. From my experience, I think, even watching my own fobbles, dealing with those soft skills and realizing that you hire people because of your belief in their skills and their ability has to be your greatest driving force.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree. Doubling down on your strengths and then surrounding yourself with the experts that basically cover your weaknesses.
yes, yes, and that's kind of a hard thing to do when you're kind of giving birth to your baby, so to speak, and it's hard to be that parent that has faith in that child growing to where it needs to grow, and that counts for building teams. It counts for trusting employees. Counts for trusting yourself.
Yeah, I agree. So, what's one piece of advice you have for the audience, personal or professional?
One piece of advice: humble yourself. Learn to be yourself and accept yourself, and learn to love yourself more than anything. That's a hard thing for us all to do, and it's one of those soft skills that is a little more touchy feely in a business world where people feel like they have to put up the tough front. It's hard to kind of let your guard down and just be who you are, and be accepting and open, and let the universe flow through you. So I'd say
Yeah.
just, learn to flow with things and be who you are.
Yeah, I agree. And I think if you don't humble yourself, something will come along that will humble you.
Yes, sir. And I can speak truth to that. I can speak truth to that.
Yeah, and I mean, oftentimes there's young entrepreneurs or people that haven't necessarily experienced, shortcomings or different, traumatic or painful experiences in business and in life. So, if you're going through a, great period, obviously globally we have this crazy adjustment in terms of life and what's going on, but you may be doing great in business and it looks like family and stuff and friends are on the same level. I think you should prepare in good times and be ready for when something comes along, because if you're not ready, it's going to be tough in terms of staying focused to get through a certain traumatic event or a hard period of your life.
Yes, so much truth in that. Everything's day to day, and you never know what's going to be around that corner. You can never be too prepared. And even though you are too prepared, sometimes you are throwing those curveballs, and that's where you just kind of have to double down on what you know and go with kind of where you're being drawn in life.
I agree. So I really appreciate you stopping by today. Can you let the audience know how they can find you?
Thank you. Yes, you can find me at the lightinside.us, as in us, for the podcast. And you can find me at jeffreybesecker.com to connect with me and hopefully be guided somewhere where you discover your light.
Awesome. Thanks again for stopping by.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And it's been a pleasure.